Good morning, everybody. Are you ready to start IETF 92? Okay. Take into account the enthusiastic answer. We are going to start. So this is a second meeting, whatever those acronyms mean. I am Dan Romascano, Adam Montville, my co-chair. For a change, we have both co-chairs in the room for this IETF meeting. This is Note 12, very important information about the IPR policies. Actually, this is you signed to respecting the IPR policy of the IETF. This page provides you a number of important references. Please act accordingly. If you have anything that is unclear or doubts or questions, please address them to us, the chairs, or to the area directors. Okay, admin tasks. Note takers. So we had Danny volunteering and Aziz. Is Aziz in the room? Aziz did not wake up yet. Okay, so we'll need a second note taker at least until Aziz shows up to start the meeting. Okay, thanks, Nancy. And we have a JavaScribe who deserves a star. So you didn't decide about the color of the star? Okay, we'll talk later. Okay. Some more logistics. People, the Secretariat asked us, people who talk, please stand. There is a pink rectangle. Actually, will make you visible to the internet and via the internet to the whole universe. So, of course, it's a volunteering decision because we are an organization of volunteers, but please volunteer to stand there if you volunteer to present. As for the last 3 or 4 meetings, we are going to have 2 meetings this week. The first one is this one, the second one on Friday, and we'll do hopefully a lot of useful work in between. So this is the agenda for the meeting today. We already have bashed it a little bit at the beginning before the meeting because we believe that probably the information model, or unfortunately the information model, has not that much information to report and discuss for 40 minutes. So we'll probably it will take whatever time it will take, and we may spend more time into the following points, including the scope considerations. Concerning protocol submissions, and we'll discuss this, we are not in good shape at this point in time. And I kind of expect those things to continue to come, but we may have some spare time generated by this point as well, which is not good. Yes. Yes. But this doesn't mean we are not even at the plural. We're still in not a good shape. Yes. Okay.
Would anybody object to moving the scope discussion up in the agenda before we talk about some of the other things? Because if we have a scope discussion that, well, narrows what it is we're talking about, it might have an impact on the other portions of our discussions today. Okay. Okay, so do we want to move that up to number 4 then? Okay, well, so we'll move scope in front of that. Okay.
So we'll do immediately after the use cases, which is probably quite short. Okay, this agenda for Friday, it's still open to changes, but just pay attention that we are going to, we have a number of liaisons that actually come to us from the open group, from ETSI to groups within ETSI and from CGPP. So pay attention to those. Okay, and the working group status.
All right. So let's see. The use case draft is scheduled for telechat, I believe, and so that's in progress. There are a few nits that have been updated or will be updated rather. Dave will cover those in a minute. We're still not doing great on milestones, but I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. All this information that's here is basically left over from the last meeting we had. This week, I'd like to talk to a bunch of people in this group about what our milestones ought to be and what might be a reasonable schedule for those milestones. And then on Friday, during our session, we'll have a proposal for a new set, essentially. That's really the status, I think. And we'll have a nice scope discussion this morning too, which may impact some things, which will be good. So with that.
Okay. Any more questions? If not, we go to business. So Dave. Okay. You need to protect anything or? Okay.
Oh yeah, I do. I was just yeah. So I'm here to talk about the use case draft, which is currently going through the ISG process. We received comments from a sector review from Florence Mari, and those were received after the IETF submission deadline. So I haven't posted an updated draft yet. But this morning I have a change track version of the document that I'd like to call out a couple of items on that would be good to talk through. My plan is basically immediately after this meeting to submit an updated draft. So the nature of Warren's changes were largely editorial in nature. He indicated in quite a few places where there was missing punctuation, where apostrophes were needed to indicate possession, a few things like that. There were probably, I think there's about 10 or so changes of that nature in the document. The one thing that he did suggest that we included in the document, which seemed reasonable to me, is that the document could mention that a malicious party could use this collected data to help them figure out which endpoints are not as well protected. So, in the spirit of addressing that point, I added those sentences to the security considerations section. So if you could scroll down to that. So effectively, what we have here, I believe, is a kind of an anti-use case, essentially. So I added some text around this consideration, which basically says, one anti-use case for security automation is that a malicious actor could use the security automation infrastructure and related collected data to determine endpoint weaknesses to exploit. It is important that security considerations in the related documents identify methods to both identify and prevent such activity. So at this point, I'm looking for any feedback on that text. Would you like to see any changes made to this text? Do you think that this adequately covers Warren's concerns? Any objections?
Hi, Medica KO IID. I like it as an initial start. I want to think through it a bit because I think being a little bit maybe more elaborate would help readers and folks. So it's kind of generic. And so it may be okay generic, but I have a gut feeling that maybe
So,
seeing one or two more sentences.
so
might be good.
can we take an action item to start to work the details of this text? Just to remind people. So this is this document was in last call, and what we're discussing here are actually the Security Directorate review comments. So the version to come of this document will be basically the version that will land on the table of the ISG, and we'd like this to happen immediately after. Actually, it's.
Kathleen Moriarty. So I actually already had a ballot put on it. So
Okay,
IESG
so
members are able to review this for, I don't know, a week already. And the next telechat's on the 9th.
okay, so it's even scheduled. So please work to make the update available, if possible, even posted during the week, so that ISG members don't get a different version, which is with considerable changes too late.
Right, like I said, I'd like to get this resolved today. Eric, relating to your comment though, what additional details?
Chris Anasio, CERT. I'm just a little concerned about that last one. It is important that security considerations and the related documents identify methods to both identify and prevent such activity. So does that mean, for example, in the architecture document that we should be in its security section describing how to kind of armor a database and endpoint box?
I think what I was thinking about here was that we should have necessary access control and authorization.
Physical security? Because if you can get your fingers on the keyboard of the box, then you win, right? So where do you draw the line, I guess?
Physical security is outside the scope of
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's just that what does it mean for that last sentence such that you kind of punt? That's my only concern.
So do you have suggestions as to how we can further tighten this?
I mean, so to some extent, the security considerations, as you well know, get reviewed in the security directorate, and it's not clear to me that this sentence in this document helps the security review or the implementation. And then it's also not clear to me what it would imply if I were looking at those other documents as to what's sufficient security.
Are you suggesting
That last sentence. Just that it is important that security considerations and the related documents identify methods. Because it's not there's no way for you to read after reading that sentence. There's no appropriate response you could make, right? If I'm somebody who's deploying that, I don't know how that helps me.
So I'll help you. I don't know if did this come from one of my comments, Kathleen Moriarty?
no, it was from Lauren.
Okay. This is more to help the working group so that your later documents include this. And I've made such changes in other like routing area and operations, framework and use case documents to guide the working group and give them clues as to what we'll be looking for in subsequent documents. You're not going to go into detail in a draft on those points. You're just going to make high-level statements that talk about access control, authentication. If it's not part of your protocol, you just want to make the statement that the infrastructure should be protected for the level of the data that's on those systems. Whether and then point out if there's privacy concerns or if there's security concerns with compromise. And here it could lead to reconnaissance. There's tons of data that could be used for later attacks. Yeah. So it's really just to put those statements in. Well, the value isn't necessarily for us in this room who understand it. It's for all the other people that are going to read these documents subsequently. So some operator out who doesn't know as much as you or I or Jim or anyone else in this room, they need to be clued in, like, oh, right, I have to protect my infrastructure because there are real attacks that go after the infrastructure rather than the communications, which is really what gets targeted. It's a lot easier. Yeah, it's just some statements.
Jim Schott. I have a problem with the term anti-use case because that's basically says if I don't want to deal with these things, I want to actually just not implement any of this stuff to begin with. But one of the things that I'm wondering is, can we put in, similar to the EG above and the sentence above, and the EG on a couple of different types of attacks that we're looking at? You know, for example, passive monitoring, database access, things like that. Just so we have some idea of the types of attacks that we're actually thinking of that we need to look for when we start reviewing the other documents. Much, much better.
Yeah, this is Medica KO. Dave, I will actually help wordsmith something. That's exactly what I was thinking too, and I was thinking through that, having something explicit that would say this could be circumvented or that, and so that all the other documents can think through how that would potentially happen. And it just needs to be a little bit of wordsmithing and maybe 2 or 3, maybe 2 sentences more.
Just one observation, because and I apologize to you, David, but you are the first victim of this. We adopted the mode of work to use the tracker, GitHub, and this is the first case. Actually, we cannot impose to reviewers from the security directory, for example, to use our tools. But on the other hand, we'd like to have this comment also kind of entered and followed up, tracked. So I'm kind of wondering whether we should, it is the responsibility of the editors to put these comments in track, actually, with the explicit mention coming from the security directorate review or whatever.
In response to that, this is kind of late in the process, which is why I didn't even think of putting it in the tracker. And assuming that this is the last point of feedback, we can add a user tracker. We might get ISG feedback. Maybe we should consider putting that into the tracker.
Right. So I'm not necessarily kind of pushing on this one, but kind of as a rule, and there may be in the future such reviews, expert reviews from the security director or other directories that may include more issues, and we want to track each of one separately, and some of them will be solved quicker, some other will be more difficult to solve, and it will take more time. I believe that it's useful to use the tracker for these situations, and unfortunately, I don't see any other better solution than to use the tracker to use actually a little bit more time from the authors to enter the comment in the tracker as separate comment.
Kathleen Moriarty. So for this particular change, since there is a text change and there's already a ballot on this, if you can make sure this text goes out in response to the SecDare review, and then I have a way to pick it up, or Stephen can pick it up. I'll probably be the one to pick it up to make sure folks know that this will come with other changes from the, along with any that comes from the IESG review. Thank you.
Nancy Camwins at Cisco. Since I'm taking notes, when you mention the issue tracker, do you want it in the IETF or the GitHub?
GitHub.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm using kind of the generic name. Thank you.
So during the course of the endpoint design team, endpoint identification design team, we talked a lot about identifying an endpoint. And at some point, being able to talk about a class of endpoints became a point of discussion that ultimately led to us wanting to agree on defining endpoint classes, component endpoints. And that basically led us to talk about the scope. So this will get to a scope discussion in a second. But basically, I want to review the sections covered. So paraphrase from that, we are to collect and verify security configuration and first address enterprise use cases for endpoint posture assessment. We have two goals set out in the charter. One is to set up standards to enable assessment of endpoint posture, and I showed it in enterprise context based on the previous slide. The second one is to set standards for interaction with repositories and content related to assessment of endpoint posture in the enterprise context. Again, added in just to remember that. So during the endpoint identification team discussion, but I think it's the last one we had, there's a suggestion to start talking about these classes of endpoints and start scoping things in that sense, I guess. So if we think of it, and this is just notional, okay, so this list that's up here with what was discussed on the call, and maybe we change it, maybe we add to it, maybe we don't. But basically, there's traditional computing devices, mobile computing devices, network devices, and then constrained things. And I would bucket IoT in with like ICS, industrial controls, things like that. So, in the endpoint design team, we've really been considering a wide berth of things to include all of this stuff. And I think the proposal is, or the thought at least, is we really want to do that straight away. We want to constrain instead the scope to perhaps one or two of these items and work that out. Then come back at a later charter or later work to finish it. Because basically this is a massive effort that we're undergoing. And I think that some of the scope discussion is actually what's hindering us from making forward progress. We haven't gotten data models done, the information model is really becoming large. We haven't made too much progress on the architecture submission, that was the one infrastructure submission that we have. We haven't seen any others. And that could be a reason for it. So, open discussion on what the scope ought to be.
I think by discussing, constraining Dave Waltermeyer, one of the things that we're considering here is not necessarily excluding other things, but focusing our work on a specific area of technology as a way to advance the work more rapidly. And then, potentially at some point down the road, picking up some of those additional things as they make sense to do so. So this isn't to say, if we make a decision today to constrain the work, that we're going to exclude all of these different kinds of devices, but that we just want to limit our attention essentially to a subset.
Another way that instead of saying scope or let's increase focus on a particular set of devices so that we can essentially spike all the way through, get something working on that set, and then see where it falls down for the others.
Raj Patel, AT&T. While I see your focus on trying to get something done with the limited scope, but I do think that it's pretty critical that we address some of these other constrained elements, as they called here, right? Constrained nodes like, industrial type of elements, as well as Internet of Things type of elements. So I would tend to believe or think that the working group should not necessarily limit the scope to just a couple of traditional mobile type of devices, but rather capture the whole scope of the different kinds of network devices that are out there today, especially given the growing trend and growing number of devices that fall into the last category there.
Bob Moskowitz, HT Consulting. I think you're talking maybe more about prioritizing. When I see constrained in these discussions, I work with vendors that they consider 30K of code space being a lot of code space, and to get them to even talk about security is challenging. So you want to do this as well. It's going to be the coordinator of the network which will supply this asset information, the rest of it, for these devices in terms of where you're going to get the information, not the devices themselves to a large extent. The attacks tend to be more against the RF than against devices, sorts of things. So, it'd be interesting to see where this goes and how you're moving on it. But as soon as I see constraint in this discussion, all sorts of flags go up with me because of the vendors that I work with.
Jessica Fitzgerald McKay, NSA. I think it's a very wise idea to focus on the least common denominator of enterprises, focus on the devices that all enterprises know they need to address right now. I understand we need extensibility built in to address things like industrial control systems. I don't think that's going to be something that every enterprise needs to address right now. And so we do well to sort of focus on what we need to collect information, posture information from on all enterprise networks, and then build in the extensibility to address those other use cases.
So Kathleen Moriarty, no hat on for this. I'm also a little concerned on the constrained devices just from, all the other working groups doing this, and the approaches are often very different when you get into that space because you are dealing with very small amounts of data, different coding languages, right? You might go from JSON to CBOR. What interfaces are you dealing with? What level of constrained device? I think there's 5 different levels, how they're defined. So which ones are you going to go after if you did this? And then, you'd want some of the IoT. I know there are some people who are IoT focused in this room, but not many. So I think if we got to that level, it might be a good idea to do it separate and then have a charter item added when we take off some of these other pieces, just so that it's known to the rest of the community. Okay, now we're working on some ICS stuff too, and we've nailed down or gotten so far on these other things that we think we can start working on this. But I think it's separate enough that it would be really challenging to try to do all of those, right? Because you might use Yang modules with network devices so that you're not recreating the wheel. But you're not going to necessarily do that to an IoT.
Chris Anasio, CERT, and part of this is a response to Jessica's comments because I didn't actually understand what it meant. And then the other part is trying to understand what this means. So if we just say we're just going to do traditional, let's just say Windows desktops, and that makes up 80% of the desktops in an enterprise, then what does the data / implication of collecting that data tell you, the potential end user, of what you've accomplished? So how much of the attack surface of the enterprise have you really stated that you're covering, and how do you express that? So what's the goal of SACM in the end?
Well, the goals are above to cover everything. Right? So, but we know we can't cover everything right now. So all I'm saying is that this list is something we can talk about, which we are.
Yeah, I understand it. So I'm just wondering, how do you express? So you change the scope and you get more focus, and how do you express? So Amdahl's law, right? We should spend 90% of our effort on 90% of the problem, not 90% on 10% of the problem. Okay, fine. I'll buy into that. He's got a law named after him, so he must be right. But how do the bad thing about security game is, right? The batter gets to go up to bat a million times, and if he strikes out every time, he gets a million more swings. And, the first hit, you lose. So, how do you express what you've accomplished when you narrow your scope and translate that into something to end users, assuming we do that?
I really regret saying narrow the scope instead of increased focus.
But yeah, so from the attacker's point of view, I love the version of narrow scope. From the defender's point of view, increased focus is spectacular. I'm gonna put the black hat on for this, because absolutely, you're narrowing scope. You can keep saying increased focus all you want.
If we don't increase our focus, we run the risk of not doing anything, in which case it's a worse scenario if you ask me.
So Jessica Fitzgerald McKay, NSA, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say we're not helping anyone just at the second, right? So to increase our focus is to at least say that we have narrowed the attack space, right? And also, I hear what you're saying. I didn't actually intend for it to be like we need to focus only on Windows boxes. I think we can safely say, though, that all enterprise networks have network devices and user endpoints. And we can start there, and that would be a good place to increase our focus in order to actually accomplish something in the short term and move the ball forward.
Raj Patel, AT&T. Jessica's comment about enterprise is kind of interesting, because when with the customers that I deal with, at least, an enterprise could be an automotive OEM, but I'm just not looking at their IT network and the people that are working in that enterprise, in that OEM. But I'm looking at all the products that they're building out, the millions of cars that they're putting out there, and they're all connected, and so that security is absolutely even more important to that enterprise, right? I mean, they think that they have their own enterprise IT infrastructure covered, but the products that they're putting out, that's where the emphasis is, and that's where I believe, at least, some of the work that is being done here could actually be much more relevant.
Dave Waltermeyer. So I believe that we should constrain our focus to focus on client and server computing environments and network infrastructure devices, as far as assessing the software inventory of those devices, as well as the configuration settings of those devices. The challenge with considering some of these broader areas of work is I'm committed to working on drafts that focus on that more focused area of work. If folks are interested in pursuing some of these other spaces, are you also interested in getting involved as an editor on these documents to advance that space? Because in the absence of that level of participation, we really can't move that area forward.
Bob Moskowitz, I second our focus is on enterprise initially. Manufacturing floor, I got real experience in manufacturing floor in my older days, and I know what the cycles there are like and so forth. And I work with some vendors in the SCADA arena, and it could be interesting there and the rest of it, but that's a whole different life cycle environment. So let's get the enterprise, the desktop, notebook, data center, connection equipment, and what you do there first. And then we'll get into building automation, factory floor, and the rest of it hopefully may follow after that. But again, let's put where you're going to get everybody's attention, which is what's on my desk, how tackle is my desk, and so forth. So I definitely second that.
Chris Anasio, just a really quick kind of comment / clarification, and by that I mean, traditional desktop is whatever, my Mac or Windows box that's on my desk. For devices that are really actually have a complete PC built into them, but aren't somebody doesn't sit in front of it with keyboard and monitor, that's a constrained device, right? I mean, my Xerox printer actually has a full-blown Windows PC in it. But just to clarify, I say that's out, but I just want everybody's opinion that, like, hey, it's got a full PC in it, but it's not in the game here, right?
How about all the phones on people's desks as well?
Oh no, I'm saying it's in a to do later.
Yeah.
It's in the
but
constraint. That I'm just asking for, because it's got. I mean, the phone is a much more constrained device than, say, my printer, which literally has. You can slide a drawer out and it's got a full PC, like regular motherboard in it. That's constrained, right?
IP phones today got the same configuration, exactly the same.
I'm trying to simplify. Look, I switched sides and you're still beating me up. Like, come on. Somebody throw me a bone.
Okay, I'm short. I'm not this short. Okay, this is Nancy again, trying to lock this. So I think Bob nailed it with respect to it's not so much the devices, but the environment in which the devices are being used. So keep in mind that in auto manufacturing and in any other automation, there's still going to be hosts that have similar configurations. They're called human machine interfaces. They're still running Windows. You can have posture, right? But the life cycle is different.
Yes.
The process flow is different.
Yeah, I
So-
can't touch the software on my printer, right? And that's why I call it constrained. Xerox won't let me install a SACM.
Okay, let's not use the word constrained. Okay. So let's just go towards the deployment scenarios, right? And usage and life cycle flows that we're going after. So in our working group charter, I believe we were very explicit in saying we're focusing on enterprise. And even that's kind of fuzzy. But maybe what we need to do is put tighter scope into the use cases, because I know my favorite one was the 0-day zebra station zebra, which has some of the IoT connotations. So, I mean, I like the fact that we need to make forward progress and we need to put a better bound focus. Now, in the requirements, if you guys have read the draft, I did put explicit language to extensibility, agility, right? And so these are the things that we have to check against. Now, I am an IoT, so I can help review, right, and then helping author to make sure that while we're focusing on the enterprise, that we can move forward with whatever we're standardizing to other deployment, I was going to say constraint, to other deployment scenarios. Right.
You don't replace your printer so often in your office, but those printer companies are coming out with new boxes every year. So they may be interested in this for that regard too. So, but again, we put our scope to the enterprise, to these sorts of systems, and is a printer constrained or not? I think there's some good definitions constraining that something is highly limited in that system. And just because a device does not have a user other than the little screen with the pad and so forth, touchpad on it, I don't think it fits any definition of constraint.
It's got a bigger hard drive than some of the people's desktops. That's not the point. Yeah, so I guess some part of it is kind of like a real practical question in there, right? Which is, as we work on kind of endpoint model, is the printer out of scope to start?
Good discussion to have. I don't know the answer. And what I'd like to propose, well, first I'll start with the question. How many people are interested in having this discussion this week?
Oh, nice.
It's like a wedding. Everybody over here raise their hand. All right, so I'd like to propose then that we have side meetings throughout this week to discuss the scope issue, we'll call it that, focus issue, and then come back on Friday with something that we can propose here and to the list. And does anybody object to that kind of an approach?
So I kind of have a clarification question, Adam. So what will be what will be the output eventually from this scope discussion? Is this something that does it impact milestones? Does it impact text in the charter? Does it only trim down some of the work that we are doing? We need kind of defined also what is the end game, at least on general line.
The output that I see is basically coming up with a list that might be like this, defining those things in some succinct way that people might agree on, or at least not seriously object to. And yes, that could impact milestones, it could impact charter, depending on what that is. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, Catherine took actually a strategic stand by the microphone, and she will tell you that there is a different process that we need to follow if we want to recharter. That's my understanding. Now, rechartering for focusing purposes is probably something that will be kind of positively welcome, but it's still a process that is longer than just, I don't know, prioritizing milestones, for example.
Which can be done, prioritizing existing milestones can be done without rechartering. That's pretty easy, and that just goes to me, and I can approve that.
Okay.
It doesn't have to go through IESG, internal, external review, and the whole rigmarole. So to key off of that, I did get up process related, and just if you're going to go and have lots of design meetings this week, make sure all of this goes out to the list, because some people are here to attend lots of meetings, not just SACM. And it's important that they're able to do that.
Agreed. Thank you.
Dave Waltermeyer, as I mentioned before, I think as part of our meeting this week on this topic, I'd like to try to secure commitments from individuals to actually do work in some of these focused areas, submitting protocols, working on the architecture, the information model, and I would hope that we would brief this on Friday. You know, some definition of our constrained area of focus, and some listing of who's going to participate in that work. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so next is the information model. What are you using here?
I don't actually have any slides to show. Unfortunately, due to constraints on other work, we haven't made any updates on the information model since the last virtual interim. The plan was to have some conversation this week to drive some of those updates. The endpoint identity design team has continued to meet every Friday since the last virtual meeting. I think we skipped last Friday just because we were preparing to come to this meeting. I think we're continuing to make a lot of progress there. We have a lot of material in the notes that we've developed from those meetings. We're currently at a phase where we're trying to figure out if we've actually completed the work that we set out to do in the design team, and we're starting to discuss some test cases, I guess is a good way to say it, that would describe the kinds of devices, the kinds of operational environments that we're trying to support in identifying endpoints, and some of the constraints that may exist in those environments as far as what attributes of identity we can provide. We discussed on the last meeting one test case basically that was dealing with more of your classical client desktop server environment, where you would have some kind of an agent or management capability like netconf present, and the kinds of interactions that you could actually have with that device, the kinds of identity information that you could actually gain. That's one example of a test case. We need to develop further examples of test cases with an eye towards helping us to identify what identifying attributes we want to essentially strongly suggest be provided in data models, if not required in data models, under what circumstances, and then also to use that information to filter then to reduce the number of identifying attributes if we find that some are not necessary or not available in some environments. So our hope is that this week we can actually begin to develop a broader set of test cases that we can then use to do this evaluation. Those test cases would drive then updates to the information model and would drive the design team basically to a close. So I'd like to propose that we have an engineering meeting this week to talk through that issue as well. I think that was all I had.
Okay, so let me try to recap to make sure that we understand well what is the scope of the work for this week's side meeting or side meetings. So one is actually to define the set of use cases, and this is something that we will be able to come and propose at least on as a list on Friday. Second would be the limitation of identity attributes, and maybe kind of pointing the ones that are the minimal set that is mandatory to implement.
Yeah, driven by the design of those test cases. Yes.
Driven, which are driven. That's why I put them in this order. Mm-hmm. So it would be like the two principal goals of work. Now, there had been comments made on the list, and also I believe that they will be re-emphasized from some of the organizations out of the IETF concerning those specific attributes that are being used as identity attributes, and what kind of identifiers, and people prefer one or don't like the other. It would be good to make sure that you go through everything that was put on the list, and you are ready to address those issues.
I think those issues have been specifically around software identification.
Yes.
Which is, I think, another identification scope that we're dealing with here in SACM. It's not exactly at the same scope of endpoint identification that we've been currently talking about within the design team. I think there was a proposal that either we develop a new design team to actually focus on that more focused, software identification scope, or maybe we could, once we complete our endpoint ID work, we could take that on as a next phase of work. I think those are a couple of the options that have been presented on the list. Do you have any thoughts on how we might proceed there?
No, that's fine. I believe I'm trying to put this also in the context of the previous discussions that we had. We may result into a way of prioritizing more first the generic identifier for endpoints, and then focusing on identifier specific for software entities, for example, in a later phase, or we may decide differently, but it's also part of the more generic prioritization exercise or focusing.
Bob Moskowitz again. As I listen to this discussion, some work I've recently been pulled into elsewhere is the TCG IF map, which is also an open group, which may bear looking at in terms of how they classify devices in terms of identity and so forth. So maybe worth reviewing that as well.
Can you send a pointer to the mail list?
I'm right now trying to get on the mailing list. When I do, I will see what I can pull together on that. Yes.
Okay, yes, please, because that's much easier and other people can also
Yes.
have a look and.
And on that point, Bob, we actually have quite a few TCG members that have been participating in the endpoint identity design team. So
Have they mentioned IFMAP at all?
they have.
Okay.
So yeah, and if there is prior art or work that external done some other place that we can reuse and just refer, it's even better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And here we are at the architecture side. This is a moment when we need to connect Lisa, right? No, Lisa is on the internet. So where is the Miteco? Where is the Miteco guy? He came and went. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's start with the requirements. Let's swap requirements and architecture. Yeah. Right, go to the secretariat and tell them that it is urgent for Miteco because actually they didn't want to give us WebEx connectivity that Miteco will work fine. Yeah. 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 Okay, you need what?
Do you want me to do the requirements or you want to wait?
Yes, please do the
I mean, I can
requirements.
cover the architecture too, but.
Let's do the requirements. Try to connect Lisa,
Okay.
and if not, we'll.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a phrase, all right?
Yeah, it's just one slide.
One slide is
Okay,
fine.
well, two. Okay, maybe three.
I love short presentations.
That's fine. So, out of curiosity, show of hands, how many have actually read the latest version? From 03? Text-wise, not a whole lot. I'll discuss them, but I've rearranged it. Okay. So, updates, we're now up to version 4. In version 3, I believe the biggest substantive change from 02 to 03 was I added a security considerations section. And then Adam very kindly provided lots of good feedback, which are now folded into version 4. Yes. I can't pronounce his last name, Dan R. So Dan, even though I had put a couple of questions as a response to your comments, I didn't wait. I went ahead and just put some of the suggested changes in there. So one of them was so besides the editorial ones, I tried to clean up and did capitalize where I thought was more appropriately, and I hope I did a much better job this time in putting the musts and shoulds, okay, per the IETF rules. So that was one of the main changes between 3 and 4. The other one was Dan commented that what I thought we had agreed on was that the information model was more of the guideline for how we would propose data models and operations on data models. But then since we had, so that was the change that happened between versions 2 to 3. I basically changed the section to call called it from information to data models, which I think was a little confusing. Some of the requirements were really more towards the information model itself versus the data model. Some of them were a little bit of both. So what I did in this new revision is that you now see requirements for both. So there's a new section for requirements for the information model, which are more high level. And then there are explicit more, I want to say implementation, but not necessarily implementation, but instantiation of a data model. And then I separated the actual operations that can happen on the data itself as its own section. Okay.
Right. So just to comment on this, and so first of all, thanks for doing it.
Yep.
That was kind of what I had in mind.
Yep.
You need to take into account that writing an information model and then writing data models that instantiate the information model usually happen at different phases in the development of a project and of a standard. And even if some of the requirements are kind of repetitive or they are kind of inherited because the data model inherits the characteristic of the information model, it's good still to be there, even at the price of some duplication, because specific people or customers will read what's interesting for them in the respective phase of the project.
Yeah. So initially, I was just leaving. I posed the question to you, Dan, right? Because there was some overlap between the two, and I didn't. So I went ahead and made the change anyway. So there's now sections, and I struggled whether to keep the operations as a separate or part of the data model. And it seemed like the interfaces kind of overlapped or not. And so that's why I called the operations its own separate section.
Okay.
Okay. So those were the main biggest changes. So if you do the diffs, don't get scared because you're going to see a lot of relabeling, a lot of the section changes, but the text is somewhat the same. There were a couple of new, so as a result of the endpoint design team discussions, there were also some new requirements that came out of those discussions for, I believe it was both in the data model, for the sets of attributes to encompass the definition of an endpoint. So requirements like those, I think there were 2 or 3 that have also now been added into the draft. So that's it.
Okay, so of course we need to read and comment the current phase of the document, but my question is actually how far you believe we are from going to a working group last call.
Well, that was my next slide. I think we're actually fairly close, which is why I was asking curiosity how many people have read it. There's a part of me that says we should probably force the issue in getting reviews and forcing it by doing a working group last call. There's a part of me that says I've reshuffled things enough that perhaps I should give you guys a chance to review, but
I'll let Dan go first because you're the chair and you may say what I'm going to say anyway, so go ahead.
Well, I think that 2 things. There are still a number of question marks, and there still needs to be review. And I really would like to give like another couple of weeks for people to review and send their comments, and then resolve those comments and also clarify the open questions. So let's work this week to kind of close up those issues that are marked explicitly as open in the document, and try to come.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have any other remaining open ones.
Okay, let's do another pass. So maybe.
But I said, I mean, I've reshuffled things enough and added a couple things, and I didn't get any comments on the security.
And I would actually go to last call because the last call usually functions sometimes. Unfortunately, what is human nature functions also as wake-up call for some of the.
Well, that's why I kind of suggested that, right? It's like, do we force the issue that way, or do we?
I would give another couple of weeks
It's up
for
to you.
people to review and then revise if we have consistent comments and go to last call.
Okay.
So I agree with that. And then I know just because there's a newer people to the IETF, I know Dan is and Nancy are both familiar with this. If the last call in the working group is just all over the place crazy, you can always do a second last call.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. So, sorry?
Am I supposed to understand what you just said? Yeah. Ah, okay. Okay. Let me. Okay, so obviously I don't have slides for the architecture,
we
but
have a diff, right? So there is a diff.
oh, do you want to show the diff?
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at the diffs right
Yeah,
now.
I have the diff here. Yeah.
Okay.
That was the intention.
So my first call out is to apologize for Jim for missing out.
Actually, it's a marked version of the.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe you'd like to go come here and do the scrolling.
That's okay. I mean, if you can scroll for me.
Okay. So this first abstract seems like grammar stuff.
Yeah, so there were a few editorial things, relabeling in the diagram just so that there weren't duplicates for control plane and consumer. Oh, it's the projector?
No, I believe that it's something with the formatting, with my formatting. It's not projector.
Well, do you guys really need to see the diff? Can I just walk you through it?
Well, it's better to see the diff. Let's see if I can do something with formatting. Non-full screen? Not a full screen. No. Okay.
Oh, you got it. Okay. So I think in section 2, it was basically trying to clarify. I had a question originally on a restatement of the problem. Remember, we discussed that last time. And so I don't know that we made anything other than editorial changes on that section. For section 3 in the architectural overview, from the previous discussion, we talked about having to be very clear on the distinction of the two roles that the controller plays, the controller as a management function and the controller as a controlling function for the data. And so we added text to make those clarifications. We talked about the different roles in there. Sorry, I'm now in section 3, if you can scroll there. So in the figure, we also relabeled because we had C for consumer and C for controller. And we cleaned up the labels there, as we also did the clarifications in section 3. So in section 3, we now highlight the actual roles of the management functions for the controller, as well as so things like affecting authentication, authorization being part of the identity management, Doing discovery, believing that there may be more than one data model, there may be more than one transport being supported. So allowing for that type of discovery, as well as making the distinction of the controller from the data side. Okay, so I think we tried to address, I know that we noted, if you scroll down to section 3.2, there were comments to the effect of being more explicit that there were other types of interfaces and protocols already in existence that we could leverage, such as netconf and the NIA protocols and so on. We had a lot of to-dos. Now I'm on section 4. We had a lot of to-dos in section 4, and so thanks to Lisa for helping fill that out. So we tried to put in, again, control plane clarity, quick definitions on the different types of capabilities, the collection function, the different types of collection functions with examples in there. We still have a couple of things that we need to update for the collector interactions, and we have a to-do for the terminology section for the evaluator role. I think that was mainly it for section 4. So there might be a little bit more cleanup in section 4 that we at least need to remove the to-dos and the questions in there. Let's see. And then
so you have all this broker functionality definition in 4.1, right?
yes.
Broker
So that,
proxy.
right. So we tried again to clarify, and we used the word control for management, brokering for data. Right. Trying to separate that. Although abstractly in the architecture you see it as one box. And then the other main difference you'll see is the fact that there is now a security consideration section, which was added last time. But those were the main changes. So hopefully we're closer.
So can you comment on anything on the changes on figure 2, the communications model diagram?
Yeah. Your comment is?
Yeah, so first of all, I believe that consumer CS, I believe, in the other diagram, so it's not consistent. The abbreviation is consistent? It seems not.
I have to double check.
Yeah.
I thought we had consumer as C and controller as CR. I do?
Yes.
Okay. So
it's C and CS.
I got to make it consistent.
Lisa's comment was she didn't make any changes to figure 2 except fixing labels. Consumer is C, controller is C, lowercase r.
Yeah, but in the other diagram we call consumer CS. So now figure 1.
Yeah, so we just need to make the two figures
okay.
consistent. So
I'm on a lag.
and the text. Yeah.
And so from Lisa, there's a comment. Can you bring up 421 section 4213? There's a to-do there about examples, and there's still an outstanding question.
Okay.
Should that section just be removed completely, like no collector interactions with target endpoints? Just remove that, or does it need to be filled in?
Right. So this section needs to either to go out or to be filled in with content. Correct.
Correct.
Any opinions?
Lisa, why are you asking if it should be removed? How am I doing?
Because unless somebody comes with text for examples, we are stuck. Exactly.
Yeah. If you provide us examples, we can put them in. No. Section 4. This one.
4213. Yeah. Jessica said she's willing to write those.
All right, Jess.
So Lisa's comment, I'm willing to write the text. The question is whether the working group desires this to be included.
Yes, I believe so. That's what we are hearing in the room.
I think it should be included, and I'll pitch to Lisa that I can help her out.
She's happy for your contribution. Yeah. Okay, I think that.
Okay, and security considerations, you said? Oh, here they are.
Lisa, did you want to ask if section 4, if there's some consensus minus section, whatever that is, 4213? Oh, Lisa asks, can we accept this text in section 3 and 4?
Well, I mean, I put it more in the broader category of we need review for people to accept. Yeah. And then I do need to call out that we need to respond to Jim Schatz's comments. Yes, Jim. I apologize.
Can we prepare answers this week?
The royal we. I will ask Lisa. I have a lot of meetings this week.
Yeah, so maybe Lisa offline can help with preparing answers.
Lisa, if you can hear us, do you have time to answer Jim's comments, January 22nd?
She heard your comment. Now she said which comment, and you answered.
So Jim Schatz
She answered everything that was on GitHub.
Okay.
So it's probably email on the list.
It's email on the list dated January 22nd from Jim Schatz.
Yes. She'll take a look.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. Great, and we'll review this on Friday.
Okay.
Okay, update on terminology.
Okay, so terminology update. So there's 3 people that volunteered to help with the terminology draft. Jarrett, Mary Kay, and Brian. I think 2 of them are here. Basically, those 3 volunteered to help. We did make one update to the terminology draft, which combined the 2 disparate sections. We used to have it so that there were SACM-defined terms in one section, and then the other section was like predefined terms. But that made lookup kind of difficult because you had to look in 2 different places depending on what you were looking for. So we combined those. And we reviewed existing documents for terms and discrepancies. And the plan forward is pretty simple, really. We want to start working with draft editors and authors to find, or I want to say it, to help use terminology the same way across all our drafts. Because really the terminology is going to be kind of like the hub of how we talk about things. So that's it. That's the update. That's what we've been doing, and what we plan to do moving forward is just try to get consistent terminology use across all our drafts and try to pull the things out when we need to the terminology draft. So it'll be kind of a long living document that's worthwhile, I think.
So the recommendation is try to avoid defining terms which are used or supposed to be used in other parts. Actually look into the terminology draft if the term is defined. And if not, try to work with the terminology team in order to add this. So this idea will be continually be improved, and we are not sure that it will ever make it to an RFC, but it will be our reference. Maybe it will make to an RFC so that people will have an information RFC, so that people will have a visible reference. But it's a way we are trying to ensure that we are using consistent terms all over the documents, which just the number only increases.
Kathleen, I just want to make sure folks are looking at RFC 4949 and not reinventing the wheel. You may be doing that, and I'm sorry that I'm not up to date on that.
Yeah, it was factored in since the beginning. Yes.
Thank you. Sorry.
This is Jared. From one of the last interim meeting, I thought the agreement was if you're using a term in the draft, that's the only place that you use that term. Maybe the reads better just to define it there. But if other drafts also share the same terminology, then it's better.
Exactly, that's accurate.
Okay,
that's correct.
This is Hank Burkholz. While I'm okay with having definitions where you need them, I also do not mind some redundancy in order to have them where you think you will find them. And this is the terminology draft, or RFC. So having a redundant place for definitions is no problem, I think. So, yeah, but in the end, when then everything stabilizes, then I would prefer having them in the terminology draft too. But this is only my personal opinion.
Medicare KO. So we did actually include RFC 4949 and 5209, and I just sent a comment to the work group also, which are kind of late, but yeah, so we're not really reinventing the wheel. It was at least 4949 and 5209, and I'm changing the intro so that would actually reflect it better.
Now, because this comes back, please start using GitHub. So we had discussed for 2 IETF meetings whether we need a tracking tool. We discussed what tracking tool to adopt. We adopted a tracking tool, and of course its use is voluntary, but it's very useful and much easier for the authors if the comments are entered in GitHub, and so we can follow up, address, and close them when they are resolved.
So does everybody know how? No, I don't know.
So Aziz is here. Yeah. So we had this problem of entering comments in GitHub and not triggering mails. Yeah, can you use the phone, please?
So because we had this shift from whether we want to use organization or the account itself. Initially, I did that for the account, but then when we moved to the organization, I just did not do it. The issue was not raised on the mailing list in any way, so I not really follow up on it and did it, but I can do it right now. I can do that right now. I can fix the issue right now.
So please do, thank you. And thanks, Aziz, for all the work, explaining us, convincing us, and making GitHub happen.
Dave Woltermeyer, would it be useful to maybe have Aziz send out a quick summary of how you associate with the project on GitHub to help some of the other editors get involved? Would you be willing to do that?
I think we should possibly do that and consider posting that on the wiki too, just so it's available to everybody and easily accessible. And because if people don't know how to use it, they're not going to, and then we're going to have issues like this ongoing. So
I'm for that too. Thank you.
So
okay, thank you. Okay. once we are very good in being very good on time, which is good. We can start working. Okay. Do you have anything on protocol submissions at this point in time?
No. I need to make a
Okay, so now the call continues to be open, and we're trying of finding out also what other organizations would have to do and make protocols available or as contributions to the IETF, or us referring their protocols in shorter documents. So these two possibilities do exist. But again, those contributions are actually the end game, and this is what we are supposed to do eventually. Any other issues for today? Blue sheets. Anybody did not sign a blue sheet? Okay, hands are okay. Please sign so they have a seat next time. Okay, good. You want to start maybe talking logistics of? Okay, so the meeting is officially concluded, and but people can use the time and yeah, Aziz, one moment.
Sorry, actually I have it set up, but you need to verify the email of the working group SACM@IETF.org. So you have received maybe an email asking you to confirm the email address or verify it, and you should do that. I can resend it.
Yeah, please resend. That's the best. Yeah. Yeah. So folks who want to participate in the work during the week, so just come to this area to talk with David and Adam. Thank you. See you on Friday. Okay, so let's do it right now because okay. Let's wait. Hello. How are you? Oh, good. Sorry? Oh, Yeah, it takes a few minutes. I don't know why.
the same organizations?